Welcome to another edition of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. What else can Justin Trudeau do to screw up this country badly? Well, I'll tell you, he's up to something right now. And when he come back in mere moments, we'll be discussing what that is.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
Yes, and as Sasha, my cat, demonstrates, please ring the bell. Please like the station. At this point in the broadcast, we beat that YouTube algorithm when you do so. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. And please ring that bell. It does help. I know some people say it doesn't, but it does ensure you get notifications in the future. Some people say it doesn't. We think it does. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your support. So many people have been doing that lately. Our membership continues to climb. And this is the station without clickbait. I'm going to say that again. I'm not going to promise you things we can't deliver on this station, because one of the reasons I'm doing independent media is because I like to tell the truth about the politics in Canada, the United States, and around the world. And if I'm telling you things that are untruthful, how can I talk about the truth? So you're not going to get clickbait here. You're not going to get outrageous headlines about things that aren't going to happen to Justin Trudeau. He's not going to jail for the Emergencies Act invocation. Might get a slap on their wrist. And so let's not pretend it's all over for Justin Trudeau, because the fight is still beginning. And I'll tell you why. He is preparing right now for the next election. And it's called electoral or election reform. You know, and we've seen this. But before I get into this, I wanted to invite you to please have a look at my Substack. I wrote an article yesterday that I'm quite proud of, because it's my personal reflections on what has happened since the end of the Cold War, and how we have military people like the UK Chief of the General Staff. This is the head honcho of the British Army, saying that they need national service, conscription, a draft, whatever you want to call it, because the UK and other NATO members should prepare for a land war with Russia. This is insane. This is nuts. This is absolute crap talk. We can't have a war with Russia. And no matter what these idiots think sounds like a good idea as they sit in their reclining lazy boy and watch the world go by at the end of their careers, knowing full well they're not going to be on the battlefield. Well, guess what, bonzo? If we have a nuclear war with Russia, it's going to incinerate everybody's home, and you won't be escaping it anytime soon. So please, I ask you to have a look at this article. I talk about my time in Bosnia, where I sat during Christmas dinner on my side with a bunch of United States Green Berets. These are the special forces that have been, with their storied past. There was a movie made about them during the Vietnam War, starring John Wayne. And on the other side of the table were Russian special forces, the equivalent of the Green Berets. These people were sharing Christmas dinner together, sharing a bit of small talk as much as the language barrier would allow. The Russians could speak some English. Americans couldn't speak any Russian, but the Russians did know some English phrases, and they were wishing each other Merry Christmas and how nice it was that they weren't at war. And I thought at the time, these guys were originally purposed to kill each other. That's what this was all about. They were going to meet on the battlefield someday and probably kill each other, or kill American or Russian civilians behind the lines. And this was not going to happen, I thought. The Cold War was over. How nice it was that we saw these two peoples coming together. But of course, that's not what happened with NATO. The NATO expansion continued despite American assurances that it wouldn't. And it's gone on and on and on until we have people like this UK general, this British Army general, suggesting we have a national draft because we have to fight a war with Russia. And you hear the same talk from other NATO countries. So you know this is a globalist movement again. So I'll leave it at that for now. I want to get back to what I'm talking about with Trudeau. I think it's extremely important to note that he's now talking about electoral reform with the NDP, the New Democratic Party. That's his coalition. It's a de facto coalition. You can call it a loose coalition, but the NDP continues to prop up the Liberal minority government. So what are they talking about? Well, we've got Daniel LeBlanc, very close friend of the Prime Minister, very close to Justin Trudeau. He's the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, and he's meeting with the NDP MP, who is the Democratic reform critic, Daniel Blaikie. So these guys are meeting behind closed doors in secret, talking about electoral reform. So what does that mean? What does electoral reform actually mean? Now, I'll read a few sentences from this article when I get there. But the Liberals and the NDP are meeting in secret in negotiations to, one, allow for an expanded voting period of at least 3 days. So you give 3 days for people to vote. Guess what can happen? Number 2, allow voters to cast their ballots at any polling place. And 3, increase the use of mail-in ballots. I'll tell you what's wrong with all of these things. I'll tell you very, very explicitly. You expand the amount of days that people can vote, and the potential for abuse or corruption expands along with that voting period. It escalates because that's when you start getting people delivering votes very mysteriously under the the surveillance. When suddenly massive votes start to appear because there's voter corruption, because there's voter fraud going on. This is why the Americans are in such a bad place with election integrity in their country, because they've got expanded voting period that goes on for up to a week at times. Now, they want voters to cast their ballots at any polling place in the constituency. So even if my address doesn't correspond to where I'm supposed to be voting, I can go someplace else. What if I vote 2 or 3 times? Is the potential there for that to happen? Of course it is. Well, no, I didn't really vote over there. I went to the wrong voting place. Now I'm coming here. And the increase in the use of mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots are a invitation for fraud. The more mail-in ballots we have are an invitation for what is called ballot harvesting. This is when a third party, usually a political operative, literally goes to a location, a house, and picks up somebody else's ballot and brings it back to the voting area. Yes, that happens. In California, for instance, it's all mail-in ballots. And ballot harvesting has gone crazy. It runs rampant. So you've got political operatives picking up somebody else's ballot, bringing it in to the voting area. So what happens between point A and point B when they pick up that ballot and they go to the voting area? Is there the potential for tampering? Of course there's a potential for tampering. Has it been going on? Yes, it has. We don't need it. When I listen to this nonsense going on, what they're talking about is new legislation or a overhaul of the Elections Canada Act right now. And so Mr. Blaikie admits there's been a fair amount of work done on this file. And he talks about how, this is an idea whose time has come and we need to do this. But nothing said from Dominic LeBlanc. His flack simply said that, yes, confirmed that there was negotiations going on, and you'll understand more about it in due course. In other words, don't ask any questions. We're not going to respond. But this is, of course, exactly what Canada doesn't need. Because if there's one thing that works in Canada, it's our election process. Now, I actually worked for Elections Canada in 2015, the 2015 election. So if I had any doubts about the process being valid, if I had any doubts about the integrity of the process, I think I would have seen those because I was in charge of a polling station in my part of Ontario during the 2015 federal election. I saw how good the process was because people weren't allowed to just show up without any identification, without being citizens, and just allowed to vote because we felt it was the right thing to do. People had to show ID. People had to show up, and they were given one ballot, and they marked their X on that ballot in a secret place with a pencil. The ballot was then given back to the Elections Canada people, who deposited in the box while the voter saw it being put in the box. Those ballots were then counted physically, in person, by Elections Canada workers, and that process was scrutinized by all political parties involved. The result was a system that worked very well and that continues to work very well if you want an honest system. If you don't want a system that is potentially liable to fraud and corruption. But start tinkering with this. Start adding the number of days to get the right amount of ballots for Justin Trudeau, to get a right amount of votes for the Liberal Party, then the system collapses. And the system isn't working anymore. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that we have a good electoral process. We don't need to tamper with that process. And if Justin Trudeau wants to do that now, he's been talking about this for the last 8 years. Why is he suddenly interested in it now? Why are there secret negotiations going on now with Liberal Party cabinet ministers and NDP critics? Why now? Because Justin Trudeau knows he's going to lose the next election unless he does something drastic. And maybe corrupting the political system, the electoral system, maybe corrupting that is part of the solution for Justin Trudeau. They've had nothing but problems with it in the United States, where every state decides how federal elections are run. The result is a patchwork of systems, some of which are much like ours, others are completely mail-in, others are machines. And people have lost faith in the electoral process in the United States. In fact, Canadians agree with that. Canadians agree that there is a lot to be concerned about with the integrity of American elections. A recent poll from Angus Reid demonstrated that. I think it's important to point out. So this is a huge problem. We don't need to start tampering with our electoral system. It's the last thing we need to do. And it's absolutely suspect. Of course it is. Do you trust Justin Trudeau? Do you trust the Liberal government to do anything that's in the national interest right now when it just wants to get re-elected at any price? Which brings me to another story here. I think this is absolutely incredible. But leave it to the Toronto Star. Don't you love this headline? Amid confusion from Canadians, Justin Trudeau's government is considering rebrand of carbon pricing source. This is a blatant piece of propaganda from the Toronto Star, which has always been in the pocket of the Liberal Party and in the pocket of Justin Trudeau. They just love it. They love him. They slavishly adore Justin Trudeau. They're all disciples and acolytes of Justin Trudeau at the Toronto Star, and they remain so, no matter how horrible his government is. He was just rebuked by a federal court justice for illegally invoking the Emergencies Act. Toronto Star just thought that was terrible and downplayed it. So here's this blatant piece of propaganda saying, you aren't smart enough to understand why the carbon tax is bad for you. You think the carbon tax is inflationary? You think the carbon tax is adding to the price of your food? Oh, no. It's money in your pocket. Liberal talking point. Oh, no, it's good for the environment. Liberal talking point. Oh, no, it's putting a price on pollution. Liberal talking point. All of which are rubbish. Carbon is not pollution. It's not helping the environment one iota. And it's not putting money into your pocket. It's taking more money out of your pocket. Yes, some people are getting their refund, their carbon tax refund. But it's like taking money from one hand and giving it to the other, and you're getting less back than you already gave. So it's a farcical regime. And for the Toronto Star to go on about how wonderful the carbon tax is for you, and all you have to do is understand it more. And so thankfully, the Liberal government is doing that for you. The Liberal government is doing that. The Liberal government is telling you why you're confused, and they'll explain it all better for you. They'll make it clear why this is something that's good for you and your family and all Canadians. Toronto Star will make sure that we understand that Justin Trudeau and his motley crew of Liberals, who recently went crazy over Tucker Carlson's visit. I hope you watched that clip last week. That these people really are in this for you. And they just want you to understand things. So they have to rebrand the carbon tax because, well, it's just not working the way they're explaining it right now. So they need something else. Don't buy this crap for a minute. See where the source is. Understand it. They are not on your side. Now, I want to get back to my Substack article because I think it's very important. Because, yes, the military has gone mad. Yes, we have people talking about war with Russia when that is a concept that people should not even be discussing right now. We need to end the war in Ukraine, stop pouring billions of dollars into that country, stop the madness. We need to do that. And why do you think there is this general agreement among so many Democratic leaders that this war is a good thing, even though we become closer and closer to a nuclear confrontation the longer this war wears down? Because the orders are coming from the globalists who think this is a nice distraction for people. So I urge you to read this article, urge you to go to my Substack and support me there if you can. I really, really would appreciate it. And I think there's just so much we need to do. And, as I say so many times, that this station is not about clickbait. This station is not about telling you things we think you want to hear, but might not necessarily be true. Because when we came out with the story about the Emergencies Act, I didn't try to pretend it was the end of Justin Trudeau. I didn't try to suggest he was going to jail for this, because that would have been irresponsible, because he's not going to jail for this. And it's far from over for the Liberal government. Far from over for Justin Trudeau. He's clinging to power tenaciously, and he's trying everything he can to ensure he gets reelected, whether he does that honestly or not. So don't pretend that we have won this battle with the Trudeau Liberals. We need to continue to resolve to resist. That's the slogan of this broadcast, of this station. It continues to be, because we need to continue to fight for basic democratic values in this country, for our freedom of speech, which I say every week and every day. We are losing because Justin Trudeau wants to take that away from us. And it's time that we said no. We are free Canadians. And if Tucker Carlson wants to come to Canada and talk to groups of Canadians in Calgary and Edmonton, that's going to happen. Whether or not crybaby Stephen Guilbeault, our environment and climate change hack, doesn't like it or not. Whether or not Pablo Rodriguez, the guy who was behind 2 bills as heritage minister to restrict your freedom of speech on the internet, whether he likes it or not, because it's none of his business what you listen to and why free speech must continue in this country unrestricted. Anyway, thank you for watching today. I thank you for being a part of this broadcast. We're going to be talking about the border crisis tomorrow, the impact it might have and should have and could have on Canada, and what it all means in terms of the future of freedom for independent countries who want to avoid the globalist agenda and the heel of organizations like the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization who are trying to control us. Thanks for watching today. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'll be back again tomorrow with more from Stand On.